we're paying them, we have the right to do that in the charter, and we are gonna get the answers, and they're working for us independently. So, it is a concern, and I asked that question because I was standing right there when he said it. So, I mean, I have a sprinkler that when my sensor goes bad, the sprinkler turns on when the water's, when it's raining, so that's just one issue. So, there's other ones that we have to get to the bottom of, because in 2018, the city did say that we were faulted on their own independent investigation. So, in 21, from what I've read so far from, I don't wanna say 100, but near 100 emails, it seems that there was, in their own opinion, nothing that could have been done differently. And I have, just like I said before, you know, I have to see that from someone else before I can say yes.
And just to reiterate, so we're not the engineers that are in charge of that. The question was asked, we're waiting for an answer. So I can't provide you an answer that I don't know yet. So we're waiting to get information. And I just wanna ask you, Mr. Fawaz, are you in charge of a lawsuit that's being handled for Dearborn flood, or homeowners?
No, I'm not.
Okay, someone was bringing that to our attention, I just wanted clarity. Do you have any interest in that?
Are they proposing that we should get a lawsuit together?
And that is the right of the people. I mean, as an attorney, I recognize that right, and people are free to do that. People have done it in the past. I just like to know when somebody's before me, if there's another interest involved in it, that's it.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Another question was, so in 2018, there was a flood in the West Dearborn area. So is it true that the people in the West Dearborn area were compensated by the city for their loss?
No.
No.
Not to my knowledge.
Yes, that was true. There was people that were compensated because we found a fault in it. I don't know how everybody doesn't remember that. It's on the record.
You're talking about,
you,
that's a whole
Mike.
different story than you're talking about 2014. There was
Oh, I thought you said
18.
2018.
I was talking about 2018.
Yes.
I know I heard it right. He said 2018, and there was compensation because the city had said there was faults. Just like they said there was a fault on Dix, this time in 2021. So when we have a fault, we have to take care of it.
Absolutely,
So in
and this
2018,
year,
yes.
in 2021, the administration or the engineer has already recognized at least one fault in the south end. And that was thanks really to an individual a resident, an old friend of mine who was very persistent in bringing the city out to identify it. So as of right now, we've heard of one default.
Okay, so what?
And just for the record, you know, Mr. Clerk, you're keeping time, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
So what was the difference between then and now as to what they're doing? Are they planning on compensating for this time then?
Ms. Wong, you want to address the legal process for that?
Everyone should get that claim, or the notice of claim form in, because people only have 45 days, or else they're barred from getting anything if we find out that there was a defect in any part of our system.
So was it remedied before, from 2018? Because they found a defect in 2018 because they compensated.
Yes.
So they remedied it? Okay. Alright, and then, how much more time do we have?
Got a minute?
Okay. So I watched I watched a video that took place in 2018 where Councilman Sereni specifically stated that the flooding was due to construction and that, there were way too many floods. And then he proposed a third-party investigation. So why wasn't it adopted in 2018?
Well, as far as for me, what I indicated is that the engineer said that the grate wasn't the proper size and the fabric from the construction didn't let the water run in. And I said I didn't agree with that. That's exactly what I said. In fact, I remember because I had told Councilman Bazey had his basement flood and there was no construction on his street. So again, when you ask the person, we have to have a third party. I had no support at that time. That's the reason. Now we have full support for a two-pronged investigation, and I'm gonna make sure that the RFP is gonna be that we are the employee of that company, no one else. That's our job. So I think that this time it's gonna be different, and I understand where the residents are coming from.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, Betsy Andreu. Good evening. Mr. Mayor, I would like to say, in the past, you have been a very good storyteller. You have been a very good orator. I have seen a decline when you have, in your public speaking. The most recently being on Flag Day, which has raised a concern for me. Before COVID, there was no leadership from the city at all. If it wasn't for Wayne County Commissioner Sam Baydoun, we would have been left in the dark as to what was happening in the city. There was absolutely zero leadership. Now with the flood, we have the face of Dearborn is Mrs. DeBaja, but she does not have any of the mayoral powers. Yet you are the mayor, and you don't seem to be present. And what I would like to know from city council, is this acceptable? There's no leadership, there seems to be incompetence, and there seems to be no transparency. My tax dollars are a lot. It rivals Grosse Pointe, and I think we even pay more. And I don't appreciate the services we're getting right now. I don't think there's any leadership coming now from the mayor's office. And I would like to know if this is acceptable to city council. We have 5.5 months left, and I don't want to continue without the goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Anyone else wish to address the council? Please step forward, state your name for the record.
Hello, Stephanie Butler. I just have a question, because I keep hearing the same thing about the system is only designed to handle 3 inches of rainfall, and then we flood. However, upon investigation, I started thinking to myself, you know, if we're getting charged to dump in the Rouge, then somebody has to be monitoring that, correct? There is, Michigan Waters or EGLE monitors that. So, my question to you is, you dump from my investigation, whether it's 0.55 inches of rain or 7.5 inches of rain. And I'm not talking small numbers that we're dumping, and it will tell you what kind of sewage it is, what time it starts, what time it ends, where it got dumped in the Rouge River, but did it come from the West Bank, did it come from here? So, the 25th, we rained, 26th is when we got the flood. 10 a.m. on the 25th, we were dumping into the Rouge already at that point. We dumped from one permit, there's multiple, one permit from that day. We dumped 335,320,000 gallons from 10 a.m. to, I wanna say 2 p.m. the next day. And forgive me because this website's slow, I can tell you. But you have to report to the state. So in order to do that, you have to pull a permit or whatever, you have to give them all that information. So my question to you is, why do you keep saying that it's unheard of rainfall? We're dumping even if we get less than an inch of rain. There's a problem here. We're sick of covering it up. Now my basement didn't flood this time, but my garage went underwater. My garage went underwater. You know, I mean, this is not okay. And what you're not telling the people, sure, get flood insurance, get sewage backup, but every single time you make a claim, it doubles, and you're stuck there for at least 3 years. So somebody knows we're dumping this volume, and it's on 6.2, it's on 5.26, I mean 5.9, you want me to keep going? And you have to pull a permit, and then you have to take responsibility with the state. So you tell the state where you're dumping, why you're dumping, what you're gonna do to correct the issue, and what is wrong, and then how is EGLE going to monitor the situation. You guys are telling us you're done with the project, but you're not. You can't be. And you're on a financial hardship waiver with the state of Michigan right now. You said you couldn't afford to finish this project, so we're on a financial waiver with the state of Michigan. How many times are we gonna pay for this? That's all I wanna know.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Hi, ma'am.
Good evening. So my name is Lexa Sedan, and I am a former community member of Dearborn. I, in fact, moved out because of the fact that I've lost a lot of faith in our leaders of this city. However, my mom is a faithful community member. I'm sure you all know her as Jacqueline Sedan, and so I stand before you because my parents' house flooded. And very devastating to know that the value of the lifelong work that my parents have done in the home that they've invested in is no longer the value that it should be at because of the failure of the city. In fact, I'm not here to talk about everything that's happened because my intuition tells me that you all know what's happened. It's happened since 2014 and you don't need a recap on the issues that our city is facing because you guys are well aware of that. I'm actually here to give you a lesson as leaders that I've learned in my journey and my career in life. I've been a teacher, I've been an instructional coach for teachers, and I've been a director of an elementary school. And the biggest lesson I've learned is that when trust is breached, chaos ensues. And the number one way that we try to control chaos is with rules. Ms. Abaja, I think that if we try to make sure that we implemented and enforced rules and made sure that we were sticklers about what our residents need, the way we were sticklers about keeping us quiet, then we'd be in a much better space as a community. And so I say that the biggest thing as leaders is that we need to stop defending ourselves and we need to start listening to what our people are saying. And rather than respond to defend, we need to respond to reassure. We need to respond to support. We need to respond to show that we are listening. And we need to stop playing the blame game because at the end of the day, we are all residents of this community and we deserve better. And when I stand here and I see marginalized people constantly at this podium begging that they are seen as humans, that they are seen as people worthy of being fought for, I just see it as unjust, I see it as unfair, and it's even more infuriating to see people of color sitting on our council that are not fighting for other people of color. I'm sure if I asked each of you where you live, is it East Dearborn? Is it the South End? It's not. And so people are asking for representation and they want representation because when you don't have representation, stuff like this happens and it's not fair. So my best advice to you all tonight as leaders in this community is if you're able to sleep at night knowing that you're losing community members because of their lack of trust in you all, then I guess you can continue to sleep. But if that bothers you, then ask yourselves what you're doing wrong and change that because something needs to clearly change. Thank you.
I just want to do a couple things before I talk about why I actually came up here. 2014, we got hit really hard, and this time we got zero from FEMA, by the way. And so this time we didn't get hit that hard. So I just want you to know that I'm not up here speaking for me. I'm speaking for Imkhadr next door, who lost her husband last year and is in chaos. I'm speaking for Randa, who's down the street from me, who was crying for 3 days. So you guys need to listen. And we talk about this meetings and you guys you packed an agenda. We're here, what time is it? I don't know what time it is.
11 p.m.
It's 11 o'clock. And so you should have been cognizant of this meeting tonight on the cusp of this flood. And knowing that people were coming here because of this flood, you have the authority and the responsibility to look at your agenda and say, you know what, guys, let's table this stuff. Let's move this stuff for the next meeting because we really need to hear everybody here. And so that leads me into the conversation about the town hall meeting and what was that all about, okay? And at the town hall meeting, I know that it was it a city-sponsored event?
It was held by me as council president. I've asked department heads to be there to answer questions.
Right. And you have that discretion, I understand.
No, hang on a second. I asked about that because residents.
Well, I'm gonna, go ahead.
No, but hang on, I want to make sure I asked about that, so that's because residents contacted me. Our city corporation council said that this was a sanctioned city event. Is that correct, Ms. Walling? That it was approved by the city, both events were approved by the city?
It was on the city's website.
It was on the city's website?
It was on the city calendar?
It was not political.
It was on the city calendar? It was not on the city calendar?
I-
On the city calendar?
I don't know.
You don't know if it was on the city calendar?
Yeah, I think it was fluid, but the point is, residents asked me, I did ask this corporation council if this was a sanctioned city event. She had indicated, yes, she's
I have
coming
no
today on
problem.
both of them.
I have no
And that
problem.
was by the mayor has the authority to do that.
Absolutely.
The council president is the mayor pro tem in the charter,
100%.
and he is sanction the event, that's all we can do at that point.
100%. I'm not disagreeing with you. However,
I just want you to know we
I
asked.
did call some people, and they said that they were never notified of the event, and they were not even invited to the event, correct?
That's correct.
Were you
So-
all aware of this event?
Just to be clear, hold on a second here. You know, is there a problem with holding a town hall? Hold on, let me finish my.
No, I'm going to
There's a,
finish because
there's no
there's a
problem
question
holding a
that
town
I'm
hall
asking.
to allow people to ask questions of department heads. It was not meant to be a council meeting, it was
But you're not letting me finish
I'm
to
gonna
the
let you
direction I'm
finish in a
taking
second.
this.
It was not meant.
You're not
for
allowing me to
answer
finish.
questions, it was meant for people to ask questions.
Mr. Baja, you're not
The
allowing me
department heads
to
to be
finish.
able to
Okay,
answer.
go ahead, talk over me.
So it was meant,
You done?
again, for the not for the council to answer questions, it was meant for the administration to answer.
Are you gonna let me put my comment in?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So while I understand that, were you notified and invited?
I was not invited to speak.
Were you notified of the event and were you invited? Simple question.
I mean, I sounded that.
Come on, stop.
Were you notified of the event or were you invited? You were not notified and you were not invited.
Jackie,
Mr.
Jackie, Ms.
So,
Eden, I think it's clear that.
I'm taking this in a direction.
So what you're trying to do.
What I'm trying to
first of
ask
all-
is,
First of all,
if
the
this
point
was-
of the town hall was to allow residents to ask questions of department.
Again, you guys are
If I'm going
cutting me
to
off and
invite
you're
my
not allowing
council
me to
colleagues, no, you're insinuating.
I'm not insinuating
Yes, you are.
anything. If
When
you
you
would allow me to
invite-
let me
when I
finish,
invite
I can tell you
my
exactly where I'm
council
going with this.
When I invite my council colleagues, now it becomes a council meeting. And that was not the point of the meeting.
So I'm gonna
You
add
know,
my final
offering
point.
relief, offering an opportunity for people to voice their concerns and ask questions is being, put under scrutiny, but go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna finish my point. So, being that it was a town hall for the flood, and being that, one, it was not on the city calendar, and that we have an enormous amount of people in the entire city that were really frustrated and overwhelmed and were looking for answers desperately. And one, the meeting was scheduled at a time that it didn't allow a lot of the people to come. Number two, it was scheduled right before a council meeting that you guys all rushed off to. And so if you truly meant to create a town hall meeting, and this is not an attack on anybody, by the way, just so you know, I'm truly here sick and tired of the nonsense and the smoke and mirrors that we keep getting. Okay,
Thank you.
so my answer to you,
So
no,
let me
I'm going to
clear-
finish
no,
because you
say
guys
that.
cut me off.
No, he actually stops the time when we speak.
No,
No, he
you
didn't.
guys
Yes,
cut me off.
Mr.
No.
Yes.
Mr. Baja, you're not gonna cut me off.
Ms. Zaidan.
So I
Mr.
asked-
Clerk, Mr. Clerk, do you stop the time when we
Yes,
speak?
I did. I
All right,
did.
thank
Oh,
you, Ms.
really?
Zaidan. Thank you.
Oh,
So
so
let me
I
be
will
clear
just
about
ask
something.
you,
Ms.
since the
Zaidan,
town hall
you
meeting
don't
was
have
because of the
floor.
flood,
I-
why
I
was
give
it scheduled
everyone
that
else the
way?
floor.
And why
I'll
was
answer
not?
that question.
Why was it, why were people,
I'll answer the question. So.
you guys all
let me-
see
let
that
me
I'm
let you
being
guys-
cut
let me
off
let you
and
guys
not
think
allowed
about
to
this,
finish.
folks. Ms. Zaidan, thank you. I think now the floor is no longer yours.
I did
So
not,
let me be
you
clear
did not
about
allow me
something.
to finish.
Let me be clear about something. When the town hall was scheduled, the intent of it was to help people, have people's questions answered.
Then all council members should have been there, and everybody should have been there to answer questions when we were upset.
You would like to disrupt this meeting. Your whole point and intent is just to disrupt right now.
Absolutely not,
Because I'm
Susan,
trying to answer a
absolutely not.
question.
You
You
guys
don't
all
have
were
the floor.
interrupting me and cutting me
But
off.
obviously, you've come here to, create your little chaos. I'd like to be able to respond.
You
So-
actually
so
came
you
back
just-
minister.
Why?
You set the
Ma'am,
precedent.
ma'am,
You
let me
how are
answer
you
the
asking
question.
people not to disrupt when
Let
you
me
disrupt
answer the
people?
question.
You don't
You
need
guys
to
have disrupted me
question.
3-4 times.
She didn't get to finish.
I guess what we're gonna do is we're going to, stop the meeting right now unless
But you
we
set the tone,
continue.
Mr. Baja. You
So,
interrupt people now, people
ma'am,
interrupt
do
you.
not speak, you don't have the floor. You know, you guys listen,
No, I'm-
would you like me to be the bad guy? You always want me to be the bad guy. I'm doing what any individual in my position would be doing. People were demanding answers, and the answers were not, the questions were not going to be answered by this body because we're not the experts, we're not the administration, and we're not equipped to handle it. So the point of the town hall was to give that relief to people. Now the timing, you have to think about it. It had only been less than a week or a week after the flood. We already had a short amount of time. People were angry, people were frustrated. And I did what I could to help our people. I held a town
It's not
hall.
about you,
Excuse
Susan.
me, ma'am.
I asked,
Excuse
I'm
me,
asking
ma'am,
why
you
do
do
they
not
all
have
out
the
there?
floor. You continue to disrespect the fact that I'm telling you you don't have the floor.
But you didn't disrespect when you guys all coming off?
So let me continue. You know, Jackie, would you like to run the meeting? You know, it's really, it's
I came up
really
to make my point and you cut me off
So
4
let me
times.
continue. When people were frustrated, they wanted answers.
I'm not leaving this podium.
And in order to give them answers quickly, not to wait till July 13th, I asked to hold a town hall meeting. Am I being crucified for holding a meeting? A town hall where people were
Please don't put words in my
asking
mouth, don't
questions?
change the context
Excuse
of
me,
what I'm
ma'am,
saying.
you know what? I'm gonna ask to suspend the meeting at this point. Jackie, you need to allow us to speak. You are disrupting the meeting and you.
I came up to make a point and you interrupted me 3-4 times
You
before
asked a
I could make
question.
my point.
You made questions, you made insinuations.
But I get it,
that I was
I get
responding.
it, I get it. You
Thank
wanna
you,
silence
Jackie.
those that
Thank you,
really want,
Zayda.
I'm asking a
So let me
simple question.
continue.
On the cusp of the flood,
You know what, I'm not
I would have
gonna-
liked
go
to
ahead.
seen, I
Take
would
your
have liked
minute.
to seen all of you there. That's all I'm saying. But she wants to make this into something bigger than what it is and it's not. All I'm saying is that everybody came to this meeting and we would have liked to have seen every single one of you there, whether you were qualified to answer or not. This is a community, right? It's a hometown place. We all get together. We all work together. Why weren't you guys all at this town hall meeting? That's all I'm asking.
All right, thank you, Zayda. So, I'm gonna continue. You know, folks, listen, people's emotions are very high, and everyone is very sensitive. I'm going to reiterate, the whole point of holding a town hall was to give people the opportunity to ask their questions. You know, you guys can be up here, ma'am, you continue to disrespect this body and the audience that sits in
You
this room.
disrespected me when
So,
you cut me off.
I mean, you know, it takes everything in me to not ask our
It
officers,
takes everything in all
to
of
take
us.
people, to remove people that are creating chaos. Every time that happens, I say no, because it's one of my community members that's sitting there, and I'd rather we resolve it through communication. But when people constantly want to disrupt a meeting, and I'm the council chair, if I don't do my job, then why am I serving in this position? My job as chair is to run our meetings and to adhere to the rules. And if people can't accept that, then that is their issue. Then run for office and change the rules. But those are the rules that are in place now. And to be held to a different standard just because, you know, you decide that it's it's not in conformity with what you want. I'm just, the point of the matter is, the town hall was meant to help people. And to change it into anything else, I think is just a reason to attack, to have a personal attack. My colleagues were not asked to be there, so it wouldn't be a council meeting. Because I didn't want Leslie Herrick, or Mike Serini, or Aaron Burns, or Brian O'Donnell, or Bob Abraham, or David Badger, or myself answer engineering questions. The answers that we have are based on the responses we've received from our engineers. But I don't think you were waiting to hear it directly from us. You were waiting to hear it from the experts themselves, the administration, the departments, the people responsible for it. So, and then with regards to the time, I was trying to provide that relief as early as we can, given the fact that we had several things lined up. We had our council meeting on that Tuesday. I opened up that opportunity. It does not mean that people are prevented from coming here today. And that's why we see a lot of people here. You know, I respect everyone that comes here, regardless of who they are, regardless if they're against anything I've said or done, or, you know, it has nothing to do with personal preferences. I'm here to serve and to do my job, and I'm trying to do so in the best way possible. You know, when the flood occurred, I looked for ways to help our residents and to provide information and to be as transparent as possible. And if I'm going to be crucified for doing that, or to be personally attacked for doing that, then so be it. I'm proud of the work that I did. Go ahead, Mr. Sir.
Dearborn. I would like to thank everyone that helped out the community when it's flooded. My street was cleaned with crews from Trenton City. They came all the way from the city, and we want to appreciate them.
Wait, start recording. They turned it off. Okay,
Yeah,
put
they
it back
stopped
on, please.
broadcasting a long time ago.
Hold on a second.
Who turned it off?
Sarah, you want to check what's going on here? I know they have
We
some
have it.
problems.
They
at the end
stopped
of the day.
recording 30 minutes ago.
It's on what's
Broadcast. I've had 2 different people text me.
Okay, so, but I think the thing that I'm very frustrated with mostly
Just go to Facebook.
is that
YouTube.
city council is not doing its job. We don't have to go through this. We went through this in 2014, was a wake-up call. We did not have to go through it again and again. And if had this body did its work, hold the administration accountable, and know when nobody was sleeping on the wheel that night, we would not have to go through this. So today we're learning there are councilmen and women that are going through the whole process and understanding the whole system. I appreciate that. But if we had a call for an investigation the second day and supported, and we got someone from outside with expertise to tell us exactly what happened. We're going through documents of your previous meetings of the city, finding out there is pass-by gates that were supposed to be manually open and operated. Were these gates open that night? Because at 5:30, the water went like this, and we have video, so we want now, there is an open investigation to know where we can support evidence and show evidence to whoever's gonna be doing the investigation. We want answers from the city. Because people right now, and I appreciate the people that clean up, but they're gonna need to clean up more than once. Because people, they just pull whatever they can get out, now they're ripping out their, I mean, I was happy when Thursday they came and swept the street because the mosquitoes all over, the smell all over. But now people are bringing their drywalls, and so the cleanup needs to be continuing. And we need to know, should people fix their basement and invest thousands of dollars in these basements or no? Because if they can be flooded again, you guys need to tell them, should they fix them? Should I fix my basement? If not, let us know, because we should not put 20, 30,000 and then end up getting flooded again, if there is no solution. Finally, if this is an open investigation, I hope it's an independent too, as Mike said, and it's from someone whose law firm is respected or in an outside agency from the state or the federal, so we can have a trust in it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to answer the one question, Mr. Moses, yes, the city's doing a second pass-through to collect rubbish. Go ahead, sir.
Moses the Crew, 4354 Dearborn. I'd like to start off by saying, Susan and Mike, you guys personally are doing a wonderful job in my opinion. Why? Because you guys actually went out there, you guys helped out. You know, you got people like Abdullah Hamoud that actually went out and helped out, even vocal on social media, even during COVID. Now I know people are frustrated. I'm frustrated. My house flooded. My grandma's house flooded a lot. But I'm rational enough not to sit down and blame YouTube. You know, and only hound you guys on group chats and constantly getting attacked. I get it. So seeing you guys up there, it takes a lot of courage, and it goes up to everyone in council. But the people that have been most vocal and actually trying to work on this issue, the loudest two, I hate to say it, but Susan and Mike Serini. So I mean, you got Bob Abraham saying we paying $1,400 a year in taxes, $1,400 a year in taxes. That's average. So you're doing a pretty good job. I also got a question for the chief. If he could come up, please. Haddad, Ronald Haddad, Chief Haddad. Am I allowed to ask questions to the chief?
Can he ask a question?
You're able to, you can ask your question, whether he chooses to answer, that's his call.
Really, I mean, Council President, I think someone had tried this before, and we had indicated that there's, yeah, we gotta be consistent. Moses, I would appreciate, you know the chief personally, I appreciate if you address this body, where are your representatives, and then we can address it with the chief. But a chief has never shied away.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, he's.
I mean, I emailed the department several times. I made several phone calls.
Ask us. Ask it.
There is certain crimes that are not being put out to the public and then somehow end up in other areas. How come we can't access that information?
All right, well, I'd like to address that. I can tell you that myself, about 3 years ago, with support of Councilman Bazey, demanded that we get these reports called,
I'm not talking about the beat reportings, Mike, I'm talking about other
we're talking about
reporting.
crime, I understand, but here's the thing, you gotta understand.
Not from crimemapping.com.
Well, that's the tools we have, those are the public tools.
But there's a source out there that's getting these crime reports that's not available to the public. I wanna know how it's getting out there.
Okay, I did ask about that, okay, and what the issue is, so you understand, and this can happen, when you use reports that are, let's say based on radio based. So let's say someone says, hey, you know, there's a break-in in my house, and they find out that it was their own family member coming through the window. The call gets logged.
Mike,
Just,
I know what you're saying, but it's,
well, give a specific, I know, Moses, I tell this all the time to residents. Generalization is not gonna work. We had a lady over here telling us we had all this problems with our police.
I'll wait for the next council meeting so I can get my facts in order, so I can present
Yeah,
you
if
guys
you,
with the facts.
that's what I'm saying, if you
That'll
had
make more
some
sense.
more specific.
Well, in the meantime, I suggest that the rest of council, do what you and Susan been doing and actually get out there and help out the residents how, with physical, how they need it. I mean, I'm not discrediting you guys, but those two have been the most vocal. Yeah, I hate to say it, but the East End doesn't know who O'Donnell lives, neither does the South End. They never knew he existed on council until I posted his missing photo on one year ago. I'm just keeping it real. I'm just keeping it real, Mike.
I know, but we are,
It's facts. So when they get up and they destroy her, at least she's out there trying.
I understand, but
Why isn't he vocal? He's sitting down laughing. A guy drowned in his basement in East Dearborn. It's not funny.
they're not saying, he's not laughing, we're one body working together.
I know.
Your phone.
All right,
Your
thank
phone.
you.
Hey, phone boss.
Don't leave.
State your name.
Paulo Master Giacomo, I live on
I apologize, I didn't know
Paulo. So one of the things that we're wondering, when they do the investigation, will this go back all the way to why the system was chosen in the first place? Because it seems like a lot of these things have happened after they started working on the CSO project. I mean, in our house, my family's been had it in their family for about 8 years. We've never had water until 2014, where we had about an inch of water, and now we were flooded this. Other people in the neighborhood also, after they did construction,
Folks, please, respect the speaker. Go ahead, sir.
after construction of the CSO project, people's basements started flooding. So that's one thing. Another is, Mr. Patel was blaming the Rouge River for being high, and our discharge pumps, or our discharge pipes in East Dearborn being low and being flooded. So why wasn't this considered? We knew this 20 years ago when we were studying the CSO project. So why did we not do something with East Dearborn, maybe add pumps to the system, or maybe do something, add extra retention areas to East Dearborn? Things that you can't do a one-size-fits-all solution. If West Dearborn is 25 feet higher, like Mr. Patel said, than East Dearborn. And another thing is because as the city council, I will create city commissions, but has there ever been a sustainability commission suggested, an environmental sustainability commission, because that would actually go a long way to solving these issues. And especially now, I mean, if you put the RFP out for this investigation, I mean, we're talking a decade before we get a fix. I mean, if we had this kind of commission or something 10 years ago, we could have had it fixed by now. But we're talking 10 more years, how many floods are going to happen?
Thank you, sir.
How you guys doing? My name is Mehdi. A month ago, my brother got married, and a month prior to that, he had purchased a house. And like any little brother would do, I help him with all his activities. And I just want to bring up a topic that I don't think many people are bringing up is the hardest part of that whole help was that I had to drive 30 minutes out to West Bloomfield because he didn't buy a house in Dearborn. And I want to bring this to you guys' attention. You guys are losing a lot of residents. People are moving out, and just yesterday I heard my dad tell me he's on his last straw to move 20 miles upwards to Canton because we are not getting what we're paying for our taxes, our property values are decreasing, and there is no room for people about my age in the future here. And I mean, you guys are losing your residents. And the census came out, and I think it was 5,000 people, or there was 5,000 less residents. that we have lost, and I can guarantee you that over the next 10 years, we're gonna be losing a lot more people if we don't change, and then that's about it, and then that's it. So, thank you guys, and we got a clear house.
All right. Hi there. Go ahead, say your name.
Hello, my name is Hidad Bazzi, 10430 Moras. One thing that I wanted to bring up, and I know oftentimes when this subject is opened up, many people roll their eyes, but I'm frankly somewhat embarrassed that the fact that more people are not talking about the issue of climate change in any of these conversations. I hear that, but I'm gonna talk about it. Because as a young person, I think I'm going to have to deal with this, and my kids this generation are going to have to deal with this more than anyone in this room. We can double the size of our sewers. We can increase the capacity by double, and it's still not gonna solve the problem in a few years when we're getting those rainfalls every few years. And for me, I think it's very narrow, and I look to think that, the council does have in itself a capacity to help solve these issues. We could work on the sewers, I agree, let's work on the sewers. But it'd be very narrow to think that this council can solve all these problems. And as a young person who wants to live in this city and who wants to raise my kids in this city, understanding the climate that we live in is important, and looking at larger solutions that focus on the larger problems and not just fixing the symptoms and addressing the symptoms is important. And what does that mean? Well, there are levels of government that we can go to. Let's go to our federal and state and county partners who have more capacity, more money, and more infrastructure for green energy, for green infrastructure. I know, Council President, you've been talking about it, Councilman Burns, you've been talking about green solutions. Let's talk about those solutions more, because those are going to help us more in the long run. And as a young person, I am embarrassed that we aren't talking about the systemic issues, because these storms are going to be endemic to communities like Dearborn. Let's talk about how we can rezone our Southeast Michigan to a flood area. That's something that FEMA can do. Let's talk about those larger issues, and let's hold our federal, state, and county partners accountable for their role in all of this as well. Thank you.
Can I make a comment about that, please? I think that that's kind of the elephant in the room. Part of what we have to do is look at doing things differently than we've done before. We've got a sewer system that was started to be built over 100 years ago, and look at how much our climate has changed and how much our region has been built up in that 100 years. We have addressed, 2 years ago, we were looking at residential design standards in gazebos, and how our little pieces of property, when you look at the big earth, our little pieces of property, what can we do on our little green space in the community so that we're not negatively impacting our neighbors when it rains. That's just a literal figurative drop in the bucket. With what we can do on our own pieces of property. People are putting in rain gardens, and I commend them for having the interest and the vision to take that little step. But we have to look at doing things differently than we've done 50 years ago, even 25 years ago. So the system that we put into place, when you're talking about, Paulo was asking, are we gonna look back at why did we go with the caissons, and why did we, yeah, we can look at what we did back then, but we have to look at where we are right now, and unfortunately, we have to do things differently. And one of my fellow council members said, you know what, there's a reason there are drains in your basement floors. It wasn't your house wasn't necessarily built for that to be, year-round living space, and it's a hard reality that some people have to face. And I'm being the bad guy to even say that, but thank you for bringing it up, because we have to think about how we need to do things differently in a sustainability plan for the city, a comprehensive, bringing a commission or a committee of residents in from across the city who have had different experiences is a part of that. But looking at how we do business differently, because it can be something that's an economic driver. Ford Motor Company's already been doing that, and they've been putting investments on their own property as well as into the city with a sustainability model in place with the products that they're developing. And we have to look at doing that differently here. How do we provide our whole infrastructure? And not just here in Dearborn. I brought it up earlier. We're at the bottom of the Rouge River watershed, which has 3 tributaries that all
convene here in Dearborn before going to the Detroit River. And so we're getting all of it, we're reaping the benefits of all that, right? So we have to look at doing things differently, and that's part of, we're looking at where we are right now with this investigation that we're gonna be doing, and we need to have recommendations about what we need to do differently as a city going forward, but also people have to think about, how does that impact my own property? Some of our residents have put in French drains, and some people have sump pumps, and some people have backflow preventers. And newer homes, they're looking at putting those things in when you build a new home more often than houses that were built 25, 50, 75, 100 years ago. So we have to look at doing things differently. So we've got, what we're talking about right now in meeting the demand for you to be able to live comfortably in your own homes right now, but going forward, what are we gonna do? So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. My name is Alibas Spar, I'm a Dearborn resident, and I really just wanted to take a moment to kind of similar to what Moses did, except not as in such a way that he did, but really recognize the work that members of council have done. I think oftentimes when we are frustrated, it's 100% okay to voice those frustrations in the problems. It's not, in my opinion, voicing them at the people, because these are people, these are our neighbors, these are our friends, are people that do the work. And so I think, everyone on council is doing the best they can. I know that for a fact. I've seen Councilman Serini, I've seen Councilwoman Debaja, I've seen them post on Facebook for Councilwoman Herrick and Councilwoman Burns, and I'm sure Councilwoman Abraham and O'Donnell probably were doing things. I know Councilwoman Bazzi's basement flooded. And so I think these are important things for us to keep in mind, right? I get it, government is I mean, someone works in government, we can kind of think of these as institutions, right? But these are people as well, and it doesn't sit well with me as a resident of Dearborn. Again, when we look at criticizing policies, we can do that. I'll do that all day. I don't think anyone here says no to that. But when we get into ad hominem and almost vilification of people, I think we need to take a step back. And again, those are frustrations. But remember that these are people at the end of the day. And for me, that's the most important thing. These are people, again, these are our neighbors, our sisters, our brothers. They are people who live in our city. And we can hold it, and again, we can bring legitimate policy concerns, but we don't have to do it in such a way where we're pointing fingers and almost questioning the character of individuals who I think have never really given us serious cause, or even any cause, to say these people are, have reason for us to question their character. And again, that doesn't sit well with me. And it looks like I'm the last person to speak, and if someone disagrees, I'll hang out for 30 minutes.
You're not the last person.
Oh, is that right? I usually know someone over there. I'm saying. Oh, okay. Oh man, but no, again, I just wanted to echo that. I've done, I've been at every council meeting, they all went over 3 hours. It's not easy work, and I know, again, when it comes to policy, that was a policy conversation right there. We can have these, and we can have real solutions, but let's stay away, in my opinion, from the personal, when it borders personal attacks, really, please. And I ask what the community as a city. We are better than that. Dearborn historically has proven itself to be a community city. We have 100,000 people, the 7th largest city in Michigan, but we always feel like a backdoor community where everyone knows everybody. And when we're tested in crisis, we cannot lose that identity of ourselves. Because that's, to me, worth more than any basement, in my opinion. And I heard about my basement, my grandparents' basement, my mom's basement, my brother's basement, and went around. We are better than that. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Hussein Hashim, Courty Street. I think what residents are frustrated with is the lack of transparency we're getting from the city, especially the leadership. They're not being straightforward with our residents. When this happened in 2014 or 2018, we've heard, to the best of my knowledge, that this is a once-in-a-100-year event. So people weren't prepared for such thing to happen again. So I think as a leadership, whether the administration or the city council, whoever is the leadership, they need to be straightforward with people. Is this going to happen again? And if this is going to happen again, how do we get prepared for it? Don't live in basement, is that the solution? Or is there another solution? How is the city planning to basically attack this issue? Also, there's a lack of communication with people. And what I mean with lack of communication, the proper way of communication. I was watching the city council meeting on the city TV, and then all of a sudden when public comments came, basically the broadcast got interrupted. There is no public section comment. Why?
That shouldn't be the case, by the way. It's always been that we broadcast our
Exactly.
public comments.
What meeting are you talking about?
Today, not tonight. I was watching it at my house. I left, and we were actually broadcasting from CDTV, and then all of a sudden it stopped.
How long was it down? Because we were just aware of.
As soon as Dr. Sahupa, he wanted to talk because I think he was the first one to do public comments.
So we're not aware of that.
It stopped, to be honest with you. So that's why I had to come in here so I can basically make sure.
Embrace us.
Yeah, I have to go live so people can watch this, to be honest with you, because I think there's a lack of communication in terms of that part. And the other thing is, I'm sorry?
This happens all the time.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, it does happen. The other thing, I think we need to get information to people in the language they understand. I know the city acted, but they acted a bit late to give the information in Arabic. We have a huge Arab American population, whether on the city council part, whether on the city clerk part, whether in every city department, they should be material available in the language that people speak in the city. We shouldn't be requesting that information. That should be given, to be honest with you. So I think we need to be straightforward with our community, because I don't think the monetary value is what matters, at least to me. It's the memories that we lost in those basements. And my basement, I don't live in it. It's like a playground for my kids. And when I was throwing out the toys for my daughters, they were crying their eyes out. So it's not the money, it's the memories that we have in those basements. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hashim. Anyone else wishes to address the council, please step forward. State your name for the record. All right, is there a motion? Oh, sir, come on up.
Murad, my name is Murad Ahmed, 2761 Holly Street, Dearborn, Michigan, born and raised on Holly Street, still on Holly Street. I left a couple of times, but came back home. The only problem I have with the city and what has got me really activated in this political elections and all this, and why you're opening your mouth now. I've been trying to buy a piece of property on Holly that's been empty since I was a little boy riding my bike up and down the street. Okay? My father's an elderly man in his 90s. One of my brothers lives close, the other one doesn't. One of my brothers is a handbag. You know what a handbag is? I'll explain that later.
Explain it.
No, I'll do it later.
I know.
So, my point is, I came back to take care of my father. And when I came back from California, I only had one child. Now I got 3. I've been asking the city about this lot, and I have paperwork to prove it. And sorry, it's not for sale. We'll let you know when it comes to auction. How come you guys sold half of Canterbury Park without telling us? How come you sold all the properties on Salina? Why would you not give me a piece of land? Why did the Pier Park pool, the same pool I remember swimming from the 4th grade when I was in Miss Schleif's class? Why? You guys don't get enough money from the taxpayers? You don't? There's data that says you do. Where's the money? Are you guys stealing it? Straight up, we want to know, because we got lawyers involved now. Thank you.
All right, anyone else who wishes to address the council, step forward, state your name for the record.
That's just open.
My name is Leslie Willis, and I work in the city of Dearborn. I wanted to say, kind of get into this, but I wanted to say thank you to all the people that I did see out there. I thought the community came together as the residents, the neighboring cities, came together fairly quickly to get into people's houses and start getting the furniture moved out. I was disappointed, as I've heard other people talk about, and what I felt like was a lack of presence in East and South Dearborn. I'm specifically talking about art space. From what I understand from the residents there who are not able to make it here because their cars flooded, which is one of the biggest concerns, is all of the buckets of cleaning supplies and the dry ice was on this side of town, and they lost their vehicles in this flood. And from what I understand, I believe only Councilwoman Burns has been out there, and there's been calls to the city to get people out there. There's a handicapped woman who lives there who is on the bottom level floor and is sleeping on the floor because her bed had to be thrown out, and she's still sleeping on the floor. So if anybody could get out there and help the people in our space. But the bigger concern I have is I believe City Hall used to be stored, like that's where City Hall used to be. And one of the reasons, I know it wasn't the only reason, but one of the reasons for moving City Hall was because that area flooded down on the bottom level floor. And I don't know who approved it, but I don't know why anybody would approve for apartments to be built in the basement level of art space because we already knew that it flooded. I hope that it's a coincidence that there's a majority of residents that live there that are people of color. And they don't have the means to replace all the stuff that they lost. So I think what they want is accountability and wanting to know why. I want to say city council approves apartment complexes and how many, and where they can and can't rent. So they want accountability for why you would allow, 3 apartments to be leased in the basement of our space when we're all aware that it floods because that's the reason we moved City Hall. Thank you. I hope you guys have a shorter night.
May I say something for her?
If you've spoken before,
It's just
Mike,
quick.
Mike,
I,
no, only one person.
what I wanna do, I wanna
Mike.
come over and give that handicapped lady whatever she needs.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay, with the
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Anyone else that wishes to address the council that hasn't spoken already, please step forward. Yeah, you haven't spoken on public comments. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, my name is Byron Lee Brooks. I am a Henry Ford College alum, and I'll be brief. I'm just saying that I feel like it's well overdue that equity and accountability is really brought into the equation of the framework of the city. I feel that it is sad that the city, it seems that there are 2 cities living inside of one city. And that's sad when you look at the different parts, and the data shows that 50% of the residents live below the federal poverty line. And I don't believe I have to tell you which areas that 50% resides in, and that's just sad. And as was shown, a lot of these issues are recurring issues. So it's really time that we transform our error to action. It's one thing to talk about these issues, but we've had years of data, statistics, years to be able to pull information. It's time to get on the ground because, again, there's too many residents that are being affected by these issues. And as public services, it's a duty to truly be for all the people, not just one side of the city or the other side, but Dearborn deserves, all of Dearborn deserves equity and accountability. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Before you speak, Mr. Wood, saying, I've had several people text me saying they're watching from home and no service was cut. So we'll still find out what's going on, but quite a few people have already said the feed continued straight through.
I mean, for me,
But
it
we'll find out.
disconnected.
That blip.
There one blip, but other than that, everyone's.
It did blink a couple of times, but then it's.
But we'll find out what's going on. Go ahead, Mr.
Maliga, 5200 Curtis. Now, brought up the issue earlier with somebody, this is for Councilwoman Ms. Heather. Now, we on the east side live in our basements because our houses are only 1,000 square feet. We have big families. We do everything in the basement. We are not allowed to go with our so-called grass to ratio to concrete. But yeah, if you guys pay attention to all the new properties going up, they're 80 and 20 grass ratio, where we're 60% thing, we're not allowed to expand. So maybe that's the reason why we're flooding. That could be it, because you guys are just giving out permits to everybody. And I'm not saying you guys, I'm talking about the building department. Anybody who wants to build a 3,000 square foot home, go ahead. You don't care, it's all the same, 40 by 100 square foot lot. Plain and simple. Go up, go across, we don't care. That's number one. Number two, 2014, we had a flood issue. To my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys came to us, when I say you guys, I'm talking about the city. You represent the city. You're the heart of the city. You put on, we want taxes to separate your sewer from the drain system. Is that correct? Am I wrong here?
That was a federal mandate.
Federal mandate. We paid how much? $150 million?
350.
And then the government picked up the rest? Fine. So what happened? What happened? All I know is, all of a sudden, everybody's coming up saying 13 pump station in West Dearborn, 2 for East Dearborn and the South End. Look at the population.
Zero is all.
How come people in the South End, growing up, school kids have to get bused to Stout? How come they have to get bused to Etzel? How come they have to get bused to Snow? How come they have to get bused everywhere else? How come in the East, the people that live on the side of Forts and the teenagers have to get bused at Dearborn? But yet we have 13 pumps for the little community in the West. I'm not trying to go west, east, I'm not trying to, we are one city. West, east, South End. All our tax bracket, is it the same or do they pay more? Same, right? Same thing, but yet, for some reason, our tax dollars is going to make sure that, to my understanding, the mayor here made sure 13 pumps went to what state? I'm sorry?
Thank you, sir. He said your time was up. Thank you, Mr. Hamud.
But there's nobody here. Do you guys mind if I take another?
Go
ahead.
Mr. Hamud, I wish, but I can't. I have to be fair. I have to be consistent. You know, Mike was talking earlier about being consistent.
There's somebody waiting for me as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hamud. Appreciate it.
But why have we got tax money? All I'm saying is the finishing round is, give me back my tax money, I'll get insurance with for a backflow.
Thank you, Mr. Hamud.
No problem.
Good evening, Council. This is on Charles Street. Where do I begin? But I just have 2 points, and to make it short, I think people before me had spoken about the tragedies and the memories that they have lost in this preventable flood. One point is that Congresswoman Debbie Dingell on the 28th called the U.S. Corps of Engineers to do some kind of an investigation. And I believe council somehow welcomed it. But I would like to know if that's going forward. I think that's a very credible, independent body that can come and do an investigation. And that should be immediate. I don't know why we're still waiting for the city to do the specs. The other thing that I'm very alarmed and concerned about is limiting public comment. I know that was tabled to be discussed, but it's very, very important that you should let residents address you for however long they'd like to address you on issues that concern their residents and their issues that they have to bring up. School board meetings have gone for 6-7 hours, and we've let people speak their mind, and I think you should too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamud. Anyone else that wishes to address the council, please step forward and state your name for the record.
Are we able to, be spoke before, or?
No, just one time. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
You know, I do have one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Guy wants to
Now that I'm
say.
thinking about it.
He wasn't pointing at you, he was pointing at the little boy there who wanted to speak, he was raising his hand.
Come on.
You wanna come say something?
Ziad Abdul Malik, 4330 Jonathan Street. I'm glad to actually see that this was a packed room today, because that lets us know that it's just not people here that are frustrated or angry. When we see this many people that are here voicing their concerns, it means that they love their city and they want to see the betterment of their communities. So I commend on everybody being here and waiting and sticking throughout the whole process to get where we are right now. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
And the thing I wanted to bring up is the night of the flood, I had to be able to travel from my home to my parents' home, and we all know what the streets look like. The issue I'm having with, besides the homes flooding and some of the other problems that occurred, were the conditions of the streets under the viaducts. The city was completely deadlocked. Thankfully, Greenfield Road was still open, and that allowed us to travel from Michigan Avenue at least till Tyron. So depending on what part of the city you wanted to get to, you couldn't.
Unless you lived on the other side of the
Unless you were on the other side. It took me about 2.5 hours to navigate it, and then once I figured out where I needed to go, I started helping people get across from one side of the city to the other. So my Suburban became a submarine once I figured out I was able to go under the first overpass. So we spent the better part of 48 hours helping people pulling the cars out. Now, the major concern there is are first responders. So I know we've been talking about the homes flooding, the trash pickups, and all the other issues. What I don't think we touched on yet, and I'm not sure if they have, I wasn't here for all the meetings, is we need to somehow come up with, or maybe you guys already discussed this, access points in different parts of the city that allow first responders, our police department, our fire trucks, our EMS, to be able to go from one part of the city to the other part and not running around in circles like I've seen them doing, because I'm like, they're going to an important call, I wish I was able to tell them, no, this is closed, we'll take Greenfield. Because it was just such disarray and gridlock. It was horrible, so I don't know if that's something that's been discussed.
It has been, and in fact, Councilman Abraham, raised it at a meeting. I raised it with the county through a telephone call from a member of the county staff. The idea is like, for example, with Greenfield, under the viaduct was flooded for a few days, and we have Station 1 there, Fire Station 1,
Right.
paramedics and whatever. And so, today we're signing a letter that we're addressing, the mayor and the council signing a letter that we're addressing to the county, asking that they have a backup generator for there, because their pump went down and so it flooded, because DTE went out. So we are asking for a backup generator to prevent that type of thing.
Okay.
But those are things, obviously, I think, have been at the forefront in the discussion. Councilman Abraham, I don't know if you want to go.
I think it's a valid point. I know we all agree, because we all signed a letter, and the mayor's backing it as well, and we have to have the support, as I think one of the other speakers said, from all levels of government. As much as this body would love to go buy a generator and attach these underpasses, that's not our infrastructure, those are not our assets to manage. So our role in that is lobbying, just like we did, and hearing your voice and echoing it back.
100%.
And it's complicated. My concern, I think, and I'll speak for my colleagues, is safety. We got data from fire chief, our emergency manager, that call runs went up 50% from Station 1 in the 4 days that Greenfield was flooded. I believe it was from about 3 minutes to 6 minutes, something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it was an extraordinary increase in time.
Understandable.
And when you think about the factors that, those call runs, maybe not even all of them are going north, some of them are going south and not affected, that's too long.
No, it is definitely.
When that's somebody's family member waiting for an EMS
Yeah,
arrival.
it was gut wrenching watching them going down one way, stopping under the underpass, turning back, going back the other way. I mean, it was horrible.
And I've heard the word predictable being used quite often, and I can tell you that when it rains hard, DTE loses power, Greenfield will flood. I can promise you that. It's simple. The water has nowhere to go without water.
North of Michigan on Greenfield was still open. Then once, let's say you wanted to make a call down to Warren, once you go under Chase, you're stuck.
Yeah.
So you would take Tireman, then that would cut you off if you were coming down Wyoming.
It's
So it was, yes, exactly. So unless you knew where you were going ahead of time, you weren't going anywhere. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I wanna say that we're not inconsistent, there have been people that got on the podium more than one time.
No, so the way it works is people are free to speak on each agenda item, and then they're also free to speak at during the public comments. So if they spoke at the public comments, then they're coming up. But
thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
7306 Indiana, Ahmed Al-Riyashi. I just want to say, Council President Susan Navaja, you're doing an exceptional job, especially over the last 2 years. I know all the heat and attention is on you, and I feel that it's wrong. And the citizens shouldn't just point fingers at her without getting their facts straight. So until an independent investigation is done about the flooding issues and everything, I think people should just lay off for a minute, see what the cause is, the actual reasoning behind it, before they point all the fingers at her. She's only 1 out of 7 people, and she's on the council, not part of the actual administration. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Oriashi. I wanted, and I guess there's no more public comments, so we're done with that part. What I wanted to say really quickly before we wrap up the meeting, something that I think we all meant to say early on, and we should say, we want to thank Tim Hawkins, Nicole Golich, Jordan Roberts, Jim Murray, and everyone and anyone that was involved in the cleanup efforts that occurred after the flood. I know it was a devastating time for a lot of people. And I know people were hurting, they were angry, they were frustrated. And the last thing they also needed on top of that, after losing their belongings, losing things that were memorable, was also watching it sit at the curb and, with the 90-degree weather that we were having. And the fact that our city crews were able to get together and work together and put such effort and energy to remove that, at least the first pass through within 10 days, really, that deserves an applause, and I thank you guys for your work. I'm going to allow Councilman Serene last word, and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, I was out there as well, and we were all in together, like I said, but I can tell you, there's people on our crew, one gentleman I was side by side with, over 70 years old. And I know that some of the residents were frustrated, but just like all the Dearborn residents were, they went around and gave out water to the employees that were working. And I can tell you, because in 14, it took much longer to get this done than this time. We were not gonna let that happen this time. And I can tell you, some people were upset that I said it was gonna be up by, cleaned up by Monday. And it was cleaned up by Monday. And the workers that we had and the team that we had with